Thanks for coming. Lots of you, that's really kind of you. Quick question, how many people here either have an idea already that they want to turn into a business? That's quite good. How many of you would like to have an idea that you will turn into a business one day? Okay, who hasn't answered the question yet? That's interesting. So, are you here just to learn about business? I hope so. Anyway, I hope I can shed some light. I think the most important thing that you've heard today is what Ben has just said. Just do it. Just take an action and do it. You know, you're going to hear from people like me of all the stuff we did, and it's going to sound really professional, and it's going to sound like nothing went wrong, and we just smashed it straight out the bat. It didn't happen like that. Luck plays an enormous part in this, but the thing that really makes the difference, that really makes it work, is the fact that if you've got an idea, you're going to get out of bed one day, and you're going to set up a company, and you're going to do something about it. And that is the most important thing. And then people like Ben and you know, people like me will just be dying to help you make it a success. So my advice is really just do it. You know, as Mikey says, just do it. So I hope I'm going to be able to share with you some of the experiences that I've gained from being involved with lots of other people in starting and growing the Nectar loyalty card business. And I've also done a bit of being on the other side of the fence as a venture capital guy, investing in startup businesses and listening to other people, entrepreneurs, pitch their businesses back to me and ask for money. So out of that sort of experience, draw out some of the things that I think I listen for now and I think are really important when you do get to that point where you've got your idea going and you're looking to really sort of make it into a commercial venture. Bit about me, my career, I've sort of worked in all sorts of different things, from loyalty cards, I've worked in publishing, I've worked in e-commerce, I've worked in social media, messaging tech companies, and a whole lot of other stuff besides, including advertising. I started out life actually pretty much here. I was an undergraduate here. I studied modern history, politics, and philosophy, which is, I think, beats tech every day of the week. I'm biased, but actually, one of the things it did for me was teach me about the importance of taking lots of ideas from all sorts of different influences and molding them together, and a real toolkit to sort of how you think about huge amounts of ideas and different information and how you sort of bring that together into a coherent thesis. And that's an important skill when you're on your own starting a business and you're out there trying to sell to people, trying to talk to people, how you bring that together. And I'll come on to a bit more about that as I speak. But I then left university, had no idea what I wanted to do. I'd kind of always been interested in starting businesses with mates beforehand. I tried a property company, that failed. I tried all sorts of other things that fizzled out as I journeyed towards university. After university, I drove a van around for a bit, delivering stuff in London. I started delivering to an advertising agency, thought that looked great, worked for an advertising, went into advertising. Very quickly, I'm quite an analytical person, and I found direct marketing, which was all about data-driven marketing. This is so long ago, most of you guys wouldn't have been around, but it was in the very early days, and I got into data. And pretty much everything I've done since then has been driven by customer marketing, driven by data, and a lot around technology, inevitably, and partnerships, building big corporate relationships that are long run and sustained, and that's what kind of Nectar's all about. So if I click forward, which one clicks forward? That one. To Nectar. Very, very sort of quick run through of what Nectar was and did. So we launched it on September the 16th in 2002, and it was a really big marketing event. The whole of this country went purple. We booked TV, we booked newspapers. Was still really big in marketing when this happened. The internet was just starting out. Hard to believe that social media didn't really exist. We did collect email addresses when we signed people up. That was really important. Did I go forward or backwards there? Sorry, little. Does it make a difference which I press? The biggest part of Nectar's launch was in store. We trained 200,000 retail employees on how to launch Nectar to the consumers. And this is a picture of Sainsbury's. It was the biggest campaign Sainsbury's had ever run. It was the biggest campaign that Barclaycard had ever run. It was the biggest campaign that BP had ever run. Debenhams emptied all their shop windows of all product and just promoted Nectar in it. And it was very exciting. The launch budget was over £30 million spent in about 6 weeks. We raised £50 million in the company that owned and operated the program. I remember our venture capital partner who sat on our board asking us, well, so what are you going to do with all this money? 25 million of it was his. And we said, well, we're going to spend most of it in the first 6 weeks. And he looked at us and he said, well, what happens if it doesn't work? And we said, well, it's going to work, don't worry. We did dominate the UK consumer attention. And one of the things I like most about what we did was mostly when you launch a product and you do a lot of advertising, at that time, the industry standard for 3 months later, how aware people were of what you did, you kind of get a 6% type of figure. We were on 46% 3 months later, and that because of what everyone was doing in the shops you went into. Do you have an Nectar card? Every time you shopped, that awareness level sustained and has pretty much been around ever since. The other great thing was that nearly 100% of everybody who had joined Nectar, which was over half the country, said that it was at least as good as, and most people said, 60% of people said it's better than anything else in the market today. So everyone was really pleased with it. And that was a big success. We had a few quite important issues along the way. Our website, where we were encouraging people to sign up, melted. It just completely crashed. And we had all sorts of data issues where we were exposing one person's data to another person trying to sign up. We had the data commissioner on the phone. That was pretty uncomfortable, but we kind of got through it. And for the main sponsors, it was very, very successful very quickly. 5 years later, in December 2007, we sold the business for £368 million, and that was a big success too, because 10 weeks later, the Fed bailed out Bear Stearns, and the whole world collapsed. And we just managed to get it away for 16 times earnings multiple. And of course, that was all down to us. It had nothing to do with luck. Because well, this bit of it, fortunately, but that was very, very lucky. And the one thing I would say about luck, though, and we all need it, and it happens to all of us, hopefully, fairly frequently in our careers, but you make your luck by how hard you work, how hard you try, how many times you get back up again, by taking the decision to get out of bed, go and start a company. Those things start to generate when you can be lucky. So don't forget that. The other thing, I suppose the last sort of 5 years or so, I've been involved in a private office, very, very small venture capital business, really focused on very early stage businesses. And we've probably looked at the last 5 years just to give you some idea of how this sort of stuff works. Maybe 1,000 companies reviewed, business plans looked at, ideas listened to. We've invested in, that should be less than 10, not more than 10. And our focus, because it's kind of what we do, is all around retail technology, customer engagement, data, around insight, and a bit about social and mobile. We've had one or two adventures into social media and mobile. We're not in a hurry to go back there, but it's been a good learning experience. So the first thing that I have learnt trying to start my own business, is listening to other people start their businesses, is the dreaded sort of vision and values mantra. But I just can't impress upon you enough how important the vision you have for your business is. And it is what's going to sustain you, and your visions, your values that you live by. There are lots of questions around data for Aura Vision and who should have data. And it's very easy in the world we live in to think that, yeah, data, that's a great place to be. We can do this, we can do that. They're doing it, we're doing it slightly differently, so we're better than they are. Is it right? What you're doing right? And it's very easy to take decisions that are the easy way through without necessarily challenging you very much. I would strongly encourage you, when you do start a business, to write down the values that you are going to live and work by, and that you're going to take decisions by. Because at the end of the day, all any of us have is our reputation, and all our brands ever have is their reputation. And if you screw that up, you have destroyed everything. And particularly in the world we live in now, values really matter. And doing the right thing really matters. And I would say that's really important. From a vision point of view, vision isn't about, here's a product I'm selling today, this is what it does. Vision is about the journey that you are going to take your customers on with you. So when we launched Nectar, we didn't go to Sainsbury's and all the others and say, we've got a great idea of a load of points. Give your customers points and you can do wonderful promotions with it in store and on the shelf. We did say a bit of that, but it was about the journey that we were going to take Sainsbury's on, around what they could do with their business with a little bit more information on who was buying their product. And that included the ability to measure the impact of their advertising messages on TV. It included, where are you going to put a new shop? What format are you going to design it in? Is it going to be a convenience store? Is it going to be a big out-of-town store? What products are you going to sell in those stores? What prices are you going to put them at? We took them on a journey that would transform their business, their supply chain, as time went on. And they bought into that vision because they liked the journey. And that I think you've got to have this sort of cohesive understanding that you can express to people about where you're going to take them. Where you're starting is one thing, but where you're going to take them, that's your vision. And being able to articulate that in a really exciting and very clear way is really important. I also think this is where competitive advantage comes from. The technology that you're capable of building, and that you may have already built some, you may be building stuff in the future. If you can build it, ultimately, so can somebody else. And you can have as many patents as you like, and some of those may or may not define your business and make you very, but mostly, if you're making enough money out of what you're doing based on the technology, somebody's going to come and compete with you, patent or no patent. So your vision and the values that sustain you and drive you and how you work are going to form the relationships you have with your customer, and people are going to want to buy into that. And that's competitive advantage as much as anything else. Alongside that, being very clear about the business you need to create is another very important thing. I've learned that that's important. You need to be able to talk about how you're going to deliver this vision. What does your business look like today and in 5 years' time? What stages does it need to go through? What expertise does it need to have? What quality of people does it need to have in it? Are very, very important. And being clear about where that's going and what resources you need to get it there is also worth spending a lot of time thinking through and being able to understand. As much as anything else, when you stand in a dragon's den, those questions are going to come thick and fast. When you're standing in front of an investor, they want to know how do you really understand what you're getting into here, or what you're getting me into, more to the point, as an investor. So be clear about that. At Nectar, we knew what the business was going to look like. We knew that we were going to have to set up huge retail operations department. We knew that we were going to have a team of data scientists. We knew what insights they were going to be working on. We knew how we were going to build a brand, what kind of brand marketing team we were going to have. We knew that we were going to have to bring in Infosys as an outsourced partner to build an enormous tech infrastructure that was going to plug into 6,000 point-of-sale tills up and down the country. We knew how many people were going to be in that team. We knew how many people we were going to have in brand marketing. I knew how many people we were going to have in the data analytics team, and I knew how many consultants we were going to have serving Sainsbury's every day of the week, helping them understand how they were best going to use the Nectar program. We'd worked all that out. We knew where we were going to hire from. We knew what employment contracts we were going to give people. We knew who was going to get equity options, and we knew who wasn't. We knew what remuneration scales we knew who we were going to go to help us hire these people. We'd been very, very diligent on understanding the business that it was going to take to get there. I think this is a really important one as well. Be capable of doing the work. Okay? Don't let it phase you. Get out of bed, set the business up, but don't be under any illusions of what it's going to take to be successful. As an entrepreneur, you're going to get knocked down so many times. People are going to tell you your idea doesn't work because it doesn't work for them. Doesn't mean to say it's not going to work for somebody else. Crises will happen. If I told you half the stuff that happened underneath the water at Nectar, it was, stuff really did go massively wrong, and we had to put it right within 24 hours kind of stuff. It was very, very tough to get there. I got engaged the week before we launched Nectar, and I then got married. I turned up the following January, one Saturday, got married, and then disappeared again. And my poor wife didn't see me for a while. But she knew. I came home every night, and that was okay. But we were working. We were starting this huge business, and it really sucks in your time. And if you can't commit to it, then don't do it, because you're not going to give yourself the best chance. And so be capable of doing what it's going to take. So number 3, and again, this is stuff you read on page 1 of every marketing book, and it's easy to pay lip service to it. But the greatest danger is that you start with a great technology. You come across something that looks fantastic. You think, this is so cool. And you reverse fit, you retrofit that to how can I sell it to customers? How can I sell this to people? That is so the wrong place to be. You need to start with what great benefit can I give a group of customers? Either that improves what they're doing now, or that solves a problem for them, or even better, a benefit they can't even think of today. They're not even aware of this benefit. What step change can I, iPhone like? What step change can I do for consumers that's really going to bring them a massive benefit? If you can start there and then work your way through what business you're going to create, what product you're going to design and build, that is so much better. And as the founder of your business, your primary job is to be the voice of your customer in your business as it grows. Never, ever let that go to somebody else. You need to know your customer. You need to bring their experience of your product into the culture of your business and be driven by that every day, because that's what's going to keep you innovative. That's what a lot of big businesses that you may be selling to don't do very well anymore. They have lots of legacy. They have lots of business models that are based on that legacy. They can't get rid of it. And very often, like Sainsbury's, like Barclaycard, like BP, they had rubbish loyalty programs. They had huge liabilities of all these points that were worth something out in the market that sat on their balance sheets that they wanted to get rid of, and they couldn't. Until we came along, a startup, and said, we'll take all that off you. We will do the innovation for you. We will raise the £50 million that you don't want to raise. We will do this for you. We will innovate because we know that we can do this for customers better than you can. And be the voice of the customer in your business. I think that is so fundamentally important. Just to give an example of how we've done that, a few years ago, we tried to start another loyalty program in the United States, a big coalition loyalty program, very similar to Nectar. It's been tried before by us, and we failed. We tried it again. Sadly, we failed. But the thing that we started off by doing was an enormous amount of research. We did lots of focus groups in every state across the US, and we did lots and lots of quantitative interviews about how customers were going to react to our idea. And when they did engage with it, to what extent were they going to engage with it? So if you were a customer of the supermarket group Acme, what would you do? And we were able to go to Acme and say, look, 75 to 87% of your current customers who are also Phillies fans, because we were doing it with NCAA and Major League Baseball as one of the reward prizes, as a main driver of the program, they're going to get involved with this. So basically, it's going to be hugely popular with your customers, and 74% of those will start spending more with you. And we had that down to a very granular level. We'd gone to talk to customers. We changed a few things around. We put a petrol redemption in there and money off for shopping in there. We changed our program because we listened to customers. And when we went to see these guys, we were able to be very, very convincing about how powerful this was going to be and how much value it was going to give to their customers, and also to the customers of their main competitors, and how many of those would join our program, and how many of those would start shifting their spend to the Acme supermarket group. And we really knew the customer. We really knew, we'd done the work, we'd listened to it, and we could champion that inside that supermarket group, and that made a big difference. We've always done in our businesses is be rigorously analytical and measure everything that mattered to us about our performance, about the value that we gave to customers. And as you rush around starting your business, it can be very easy to forget to sit down and say, how am I doing? How well is our technology performing? Really, how well is it performing? And you might have a minimum viable product out there that you kind of think is an MVP, great, it's doing really well. Actually, how well are you measuring how gladly your customers are engaging in it, and how much experience how good experience they're getting from it? If you don't know that things are broken because you're not measuring it, you can't fix them. And if you're a startup, you've got to be good at doing that. You've got to be good at fixing it fast. And you can't get better if you don't know the baseline that you're moving from. And again, as a startup, you very often find you have to be better than anyone else because that's what it takes. So if you're not measuring it, you can't do that. And I don't just mean that in terms of, I sit on the board of a company called Acribo that we've invested in recently. And they measure everything from the time it takes to conduct a transaction. They sit on the till at a number of big retailers. They measure their technology, but they also measure everything else about how their business works. And we did that at Nectar too. And we particularly measured how much value we were giving to our retail partners. And thank goodness we did, because in 2004, Justin King took over from Asda as the new CEO of Nectar. And he said in his first week to the city, Nectar represents a significant investment for Sainsbury's. In fact, they were spending well over half their entire marketing budget on Nectar. So well in excess of 120, 130 million pounds a year they were paying to us to run the Nectar program. And he said, I can't help feel that if we put the investment into more staff in our stores, we'd see a better return. Because he wasn't clear what return he was getting out of nectar. Fortunately, we were. And he said to the city he was going to come back in 6 months' time with a new strategy, and he would tell the city what he was going to do about nectar. And everyone thought, he's going to sack us, and we're finished. And he brought in McKinsey to do the strategy, and McKinsey came to see us, and we welcomed them with open arms because we knew that we were measuring everything, and we knew how good we were. And this is what we showed them. We said, look, if you're a Sainsbury's customer collecting points, nectar points, and if you only shop and collect nectar points at Sainsbury's, we index their spend as a baseline at 100. And then we said, if you're a Sainsbury's customer and you're shopping at one other sponsor in the nectar program, you're collecting points from, say, Debenhams and Sainsbury's, your spend at Sainsbury's increases by a factor of up to 20%. And if you go to Sainsbury's and then 2 other sponsors, it goes up by 40% and likewise. And we said, yes, you can take in the bump that supermarkets get at Christmas and the bump they get in the sort of pre-summer, the dip over summer. We can see all the sort of annual shopping cycle, but we know that that's what's happening. And Justin King looked at this and he said, don't try to kid me. That's just showing me my best customers. That's already what's happening. My best customers are slightly richer and they do more shopping, and they shop at these places have got big market share. They inevitably shop at them anyway. And we said, well, that's true, but we also measure something else. And in the month that we launched the program, we noticed that 80% of collectors earning points only earn points at Sainsbury's. And we set up our database to specifically measure this stuff. So there was an enormous cell, a sort of fallow cell group that we did no marketing to, and that we just tracked their behavior as a baseline. And we were able to show them that within 6 months, 50% of collectors had started shopping at one other sponsor, with a 20% average lift in what they were spending at Sainsbury's as a result of collecting points. And then we were able to say, look, after 12 months, 60% had started shopping at Sainsbury's plus one other, and 10%, this is the 40% lift, had started shopping at 2 other sponsors as well. And when they did the maths on the number of the increased incremental sales that was delivering to Sainsbury's, McKinsey went back and said to Justin, look, not only are you getting all this great data, but you're also getting a lot of incremental sales growth out of this. We had this big negotiation. Actually, getting rid of nectar is a very hard thing to do. So it was, as our chairman said, it was like 2 porcupines trying to mate. You knew that you were going to do it sooner or later, but it was going to hurt along the way. And actually, negotiating with supermarkets is pretty tough. But we did re-sign the business, and that's what enabled us ultimately to have that exit. But it's because we took measurement of value and performance very, very seriously. This comes out of more of sitting across the table, listening to entrepreneurs ask for money, and talking to them about their business plans. And we're all guilty of it, me just as much as the next person. We all have a huge natural built-in bias when we take decisions. So when we want something to look good, we kind of convince ourselves that it's going to be good. And we take a decision or make an assumption based on that. And that, when you're setting out to set up a new business, is a very, very dangerous thing to do, and it's a very common thing to do. So most common areas for this, when you think of your value proposition, we are naturally biased to assume that the benefit that we give is going to be enormous, more than it actually is. And the other thing that we do in our value proposition is that we assume that the assets that we have are the assets you need to compete in the market and be successful. And actually, as a startup, you're very unlikely to have all the assets that your competitors are going to have. So overestimating that and taking a biased decision is a big area. The market size, the number of business plans I see, for example, that say, the global social media advertising spend budget is £70 billion, that's our addressable market. Well, clearly it's not, because maybe your startup will become Facebook, but in the meantime, your addressable market is going to be a fraction of that in a niche sector in the UK. You can see where I'm going. So thinking through really what your addressable market is going to be and how big that is, and what amount of it you're able to get over time is another area where we can be very over-optimistic. Understanding who the competitors are, that is always so difficult. Just where do I find out who's competing in this market? That's a hard thing to do, and talking to people is a good way of doing that. There's lots of online research, but it's very hard to know where your competition is going to come from. Revenue, the good old hockey stick. Yes, we're going to be, in 2 years' time, we're going to have $20 million of revenue, maybe, but that's a typical, hugely overestimated area. What pricing you're going to be able to sell at, what sales volume you're going to have. There are all sorts of assumptions that we make in our planning of that are going to be hugely optimistic, not necessarily based on fact. Depending on one's personality, that can be quite a lot of hubris in there. The other area where it's critical is cost. Do you really understand the costs? And time to market can have a huge implication of that. So those are the areas where mostly we apply bias. Unconsciously, we apply bias when we're taking decisions. And I would really urge you to try to find ways of being analytical and completely objective about how you go about planning that stuff. Challenge yourself, scenario plan, do research if you can, but try and be empirical. Don't just take a negative view of it. I'm just going to halve that because that's sensible. Try and be objective about it. I think this is really important. I was with somebody the other day who arranged a meeting to they wanted to do some stuff in loyalty, and I sat there for an hour and we talked about what they were doing and how they were doing it, and I was asked, what do you think is going to happen in loyalty in the future, and how does this work out? And actually, every time I expressed an opinion, the answer came back, yeah, but we kind of know that, and we've dealt with that one, and we're going to do it like this. And I sort of slightly wondered, well, what was I really doing there? Because there was no listening going on. And actively listening and how you listen to alternative ideas, the different assessments people have of your market, your idea, how that assessment is going to influence and impact your plan of execution and your plan of action. I would really urge you to think about how you listen. And that isn't just to experts. Listening to one of the most valuable things that we did before launching Nectar was sit down with all the people in BP gas stations and all the people who served customers on Sainsbury's tills and talk to them about how the program was going to work. Boy, did we change a lot of stuff listening to that feedback. We changed our technology, we changed our training programs, we changed some of our marketing. It was the best thing we ever did. The receptionist of your prospective customer is somebody you should be listening to. Everybody is worth listening to. And be ready when you think you're listening, be ready to change what you do as a result of the conversation you're having. Consciously stop when you're going into a meeting and say, am I listening? Because don't miss, it could be the one time that you're going to get the chance to hear the one thing that is going to make you successful. And if you're not listening, and you miss it, just be good at listening. This is the last bit, and actually we were talking about this just before I sat down. This is kind of touching on mentorship, and leads back to Future Worlds, which I think is a fantastic thing for Southampton University to have. As a founder, you're starting on a journey that is all about creativity. It's all about, it may be about technology. You may be a genius technology person that can build the piece of technology. And the journey that you're about to start on is going to change from, possibly borrowed credit card spend through to somebody else's money with a wonderful burn rate that you're being very responsible about, through to hiring a lot of people, beginning to sell some products, to hopefully a healthy EBITDA with, quite a few people's livelihoods relying on you as a manager. You're going to be paying people monthly, perhaps. You're going to be running a business. You may even have an HR department. Oh my God, And one thing that is going to happen along the way, if you really have aspirations, is you're going to raise some money, and a venture capitalist is going to come on your board, and a lot of stuff is going to change. That money will come with certain requirements, certain constraints on how you can take decisions, and certain dilution of your board authority. And there's going to be a new focus on that. So out of all the businesses a venture capital company is going to invest in, they know that out of 100 of them, maybe 20 are going to break even and make a little bit of money, and maybe 3 or 4 of them are going to deliver supernormal returns. And probably those 3 or 4 companies are going to have to deliver a fantastic outcome for the fund overall. And lots of the companies they invest in are going to lose money. Now, if you are one of those 3 or 4 people, the focus is going to be on that 20 million number, or whatever the number is. And how you run the business is not going to be about what exciting technology you may be able to go off and deliver. It's going to be around, hang on a minute, when's the 20 million happening? And that journey requires lots of different skills. And sometimes this person here, us, founders of businesses, are not that person at the end of it. So how you make that journey with your company is something that you should really think about now. What skills do you have, and what skills are you going to need? Do you want to be that person even? Lots and lots of times, this person does not want to be CEO. You might want to be Chief Technology Officer. You might want to be Chief Operating Officer. You might want to be a board director and shareholder. But how you think about that journey, the advice that you get along the way, is important. Mentorship, coaching, maybe you do some time at the business school here. You learn about those things if you want to. If you don't want to, think about who the right person in your business is going to be, who's going to be running it. Think about the relationships that you need to have. If you're raising money, you should work that out before you sign the agreement. It's not uncommon for the founders not to be there at the end. They may still be shareholders, great, but even then, sometimes that doesn't happen either. So it's really worth being aware that that journey hopefully will happen, and how you're going to make that journey too. So, summary, I think vision as how you articulate your journey, and I would really encourage your values. Just spend time thinking about the ethics that you are going to run your business by, and how you as a person are going to be in business, how transparent you're going to be, how good you're going to be at serving your customers, what values and customer service you're going to have. Those are really, really important. They're just really, really important. They're the things ultimately that are going to make you feel good about the business you created. Be clear about what the business is going to look like, what needs it's going to have. you're here to sell stuff to customers. Make sure you're very, very close to your customer. I think being rigorously analytical about how you're doing and what you're doing is important. We always have bias, and bias and listening are kind of mixed up, but I think they're really important values. And you, as the journey, hopefully you're going to become a revered entrepreneur. You'll make some money along the way. I think that's important. Maybe it's a charity you're setting up. Maybe you're founding a charity. Maybe the money isn't important. I think then those become even more important. But think about that journey, what help you need, who you're going to get it from, how far you want to go on that journey. Those are all really important questions. Thanks for listening. I once met a guy, a very old man, who was called Sir Alkan Kopisaro, a very strange name. He was an extraordinary guy. He's one of the founders of Apax. And he told me that out of the 100 companies, he said that he might get kind of 20 that would break even, provide a bit of a return, nothing exciting. And don't forget, a venture capitalist is looking for, really 10, 20 times their money back in an early stage investment. It isn't 3 times, this is risk, this is big risk money because of these numbers. 20 might do okay, and 10 might do really well. Out of that 10, 3, 4 might do really spectacularly well. He said that out of his 100, he'd invested in 1 that had done really well. And that was, he'd invested in Apple, back down there and had done fantastic well. So, a lot of us fail. I've been involved in far more failures than I have successes. But just keep going. Try not to lose your investors too much money, because that matters actually. You don't, we hear how in the West Coast it doesn't matter if you fail, you just get up and go across the road. And so actually, if you lose Kleiner Perkins, $40-50 million, that's not good. I suspect. I don't know because but I suspect that it's quite hard to, make a name for yourself doing that. But keep going, keep trying, because if you're going to have a good idea, ultimately it's a good idea and it'll work. So that's a great question. So how we ran our business, we sat down really early on and said, who is our customer? And we decided we had 3 customers. We had people like our sponsors, as we call them, Sainsbury's, Barclaycard, Debenhams and BP. And we said, right, for them, what is the huge benefit that we can give them? So we looked at their businesses and we worked out what were their key performance indicators of those businesses that we could make the biggest difference to as a result of Nectar. And everything we did, we asked the question, is that going to change one of those KPIs? So our annual budget was set by projects that were going to deliver the most amount of value to our customers, and in this instance, those sponsors. The other customer was the collector, the consumer, who was engaging in how much value were they getting out of collecting Nectar points. And we drove all our marketing, all our conversations with Sainsbury's was all about how much value their customer gets. And our other customer, in our minds, was our shareholder. And how, to that journey, that 20 million EBITDA, whatever the number's going to be, what are we doing every single day of our lives that is focused on creating shareholder return? Now, it's easier when you are also one of those shareholders, and that's important. And I'd say the other thing, I think, is when you set up a business, make sure that every single person who joins you on this journey from an early point of view is vested in the business in the same way that you are. So our receptionist at Nectar had equity in the company. She was driven to make us a success. And it's just a small thing. She didn't have very much, but they had it, and that's important stuff. So working out who your customer is, we had 3, and we worked out what was going to create value for those people, those groups, and everything we did was judged on that basis.
There's no conflict between.
No, because if there was a conflict, there was something wrong. All our contracts were negotiated to align our interests. Our success was driven by making Sainsbury's successful. If Sainsbury's weren't successful, we weren't successful. And if the customer didn't get value, Sainsbury's wasn't successful, and we weren't successful. And we were very clear about that. We said to Sainsbury's and Barclaycard and BP when we started out, if we don't make this work for you, we get nothing. We lose a lot of money. Different supermarkets run slightly different business models. So if you're an everyday low-price retailer, like Asda, owned by Walmart, or Lidl, or Aldi, your whole mission is to give your customer the lowest price. And the more cost you can strip out of your business to do that. So the one thing you do not need is a £120 million line item adding cost to your business for a loyalty program. That's driven by a belief that you also don't need that kind of data in your business to compete. Actually, they do have a lot of data. They can see exactly what they're selling. They can follow people around the store, seeing what they do in the store. They can map out. They're quite scientific about that. So they do lots of that, but it's a different business model. The reason that we didn't have anybody else other than Sainsbury's in Nectar was simply because if we said to Sainsbury's, we've got this really great idea, it's going to drive all your sales, it's going to get lots of new customers, and your competitor's going to have it too, there's no competitive advantage in doing that. So we had exclusivity in each of those main sectors. But that's another great question. Not everything's right for everybody. I was saying, earlier on, just because your business idea isn't good for one person, it still might be good for another. So when you get knocked back, get up and keep going. It's just different people have different business models. So the US is a quite a complicated market. We refer to the US as one great big market. Actually, it's however many states there are. It's very fragmented. You don't get a lot of national retailers. So you might have, in our terms, a supermarket. It's very key to businesses like Nectar. You have Ahold on the East Coast. You kind of have Kroger and a few other smaller supermarkets in the middle, and you kind of got Safeway on the West Coast. So you can't just go and do one deal. And that's been the source of a lot of failure. You might sign a petrol retailer, gas retailer, who's big in one state and not in another. It's really hard to get a national coverage of market share in all of those categories that you see up there. And what went wrong with the business that we tried was we actually got so close. We signed a term sheet with the third biggest supermarket, SuperValu, who own lots of different banners like Acme across the United States. So they could give us national coverage. The only problem was about 2 weeks after we signed the term sheet, they went bust. So, that was the end of that. That's a great question to finish on, really. I mean, it's who your investors are so important. They are so important because they need to understand your business. I would really encourage you not to just take the money. Take the investor, because it's not that an investor. If you're an investor, you don't want to hear the phone ring and have your founder say, "Look, can you help me get in here? Can you do this? Can you do that?" That's not really what we want to hear. We want to know that we've invested in somebody who's capable themselves of building this business. But equally, you need somebody who knows the sector that you're in, who knows whether or not, who can give you good advice on the direction you're going in, whether it's right, whether you need to talk to somebody else, whether you need to change something, and how long it's going to take. What you don't want is a venture capital fund who needs to get out and phones you and says, sorry, my fund time is up, we need to sell. And that's not part of what you want to do. So you do need to, actually at Nectar, we raised our money. We had two VCs, one of which was giving us the highest valuation and the best terms, and the other of which was giving us a slightly lower valuation and some pretty tough terms, and that's who we went with. Because we knew they were going to be, and actually the partner who was going to sit on our board was just going to be a fantastic partner. And they were, and he was. It was just, they were just the best people to be our equity investors in Nectar. So really good question. I would support your kind of feeling on that, probably.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
No, pleasure. Great. Thanks for coming.